is no equivalent in any other industry. And when you look at great historical examples of how brands here, Adidas with an initiative, Now Is Her Time, to have this kind of gender neutral clothing apparel, but also more historical examples of Muhammad Ali in boxing, Billie Jean King in tennis, and she was the biggest advocate for gender equality, the woman behind the foundation of the Women's Tennis Association back in the 70s. And then more recently, the NFL player Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national US anthem and fighting for more racial justice in the United States. And I think what we're witnessing today in the US and in the world really echoes, those fights of the past. And the problem, of course, we're facing is, haven't we done enough? And it seems like we haven't, because we're still facing the same issues. Of course, speaking here based in the United States, it's been taking a scale, unprecedented scale since the 60s and all around the country, but also what we're witnessing, that this movement spreads around the world. And the sports world, of course, athletes, brands, leagues are using their platforms to call for justice, to call for inclusivity, and also to end police violence. Just to share some of those examples, the NHL has announced just recently, I think it was 2 days ago, the formation of the Hockey Diversity Alliance, a very big step towards more inclusivity, more diversity in the sports of hockey. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in that regard. If you look at what brands did, Jordan, so a brand belonging to the Nike group, announced a $100 million donation for investment, so to speak, in social justice and greater access to education in the next years. Really, things are moving. Athletes also are taking a stake in the game and making their voices heard. And I think it's more important than ever. Here it's the ATP player, Frances Tiafoe, and his post on Instagram has become viral. And of course, social media are playing a key role in this virality. But outside of, just the current situation and what's going on now, we also think that racial justice is only one of the many issues that the sports world in general, but also the sports tech world must address in order to foster a community that promotes different things, that promotes gender equality. And in our little corner of the sports industry, in sports tech, we have to do more. And some organizations already trying to make an impact. And Women in Sports Tech is one of them, where I'm very happy to share, by the way, that next week we'll have our Sports Tech Demo Day, and we'll have 2 representatives of Women in Sports Tech with us on the line as just investors. If you look at the speech of Megan Rapinoe for promoting, equality in salaries, compensation, treatment, there's a lot of room to fight for here. Minority inclusion, same, kick it out, this initiative from the English federations and the English Premier League to tackle racism and discrimination, also giving access to the top events, to the high level competing events, to different sides of minorities. Here, the athlete Chris Mosier is a great example of that. He will be competing for the trials Olympic events for the US national teams in order to compete at Tokyo 2021. And then the last one, cultural diversity. This embraces different aspects. Just to share what the minor league of baseball is doing here in the US, fostering diversity in a sport that maybe historically has been predominantly white and addressed to more, let's say, higher social classes. So, just the message here is to make sure that we create together a sports ecosystem, and in our corner of the industry, a sports tech ecosystem that is more diverse and inclusive for all. And so I'm very happy and excited for the talk coming with our great speakers. And I'd like first to introduce Michal and welcome her on the line. Michal will be our moderator for this session, Michal Grundland, just to give one-liner, sports tech and media operations expert, great experience background in UEFA, at the Israeli Football Federation, and also at a sports tech startup at the highest level. So welcome, Michal. Very happy to have you on the line.
Thank you very much for this great opportunity, and also for this great opening. Tim, you know, for me it's very special topic because it really is close to my mind, and I really think that us as in this ecosystem, we can do a lot, and not just talk about it, just we can be active about it. And I just, before we will dive into, I just want to also present our two very unique speakers today. We will start women's first, okay? Ladies first. So Dr. Osnat Flies-Duel. Hello, Osnat.
Hey.
Hey, thank you for joining us. You will be presenting soon, and just let's say hello and welcome also to Dr. Alex Krumer from Molde University in Norway. Hi, Alex.
I'm from Norway.
From Norway, yeah.
From Norway, yeah. Shalom from Norway. This is why.
Oh, shalom from Norway, yeah. You know, this beautiful webinar, this beautiful session, you know, Tim is being in the US, Tomer and me, we are in Israel, Fernanda in Europe, you know, everywhere, means that this topic actually is very, is united, I mean, it's uniting all of us, and this is why it's such a great topic, and we are going to dive into. Osnat, can you please start with your amazing presentation? And I just want to say this is something that will probably raise up a lot of questions during your presentations. And being that kind of presentation, so I would say that you can all approach and like start a conversation via Zoom. You have it down, of course, the chat, via the chat in the Zoom. Of course, you know that because thanks to COVID-19 for the past 3 months, we've been all doing Zooming. So we're very happy to have you, Osnat. We will start with your presentation, and then we'll go to Alex. Thank you.
So hello, everybody. Thank you, Timothy, Michal, Tomer, everybody for inviting me here today. Thank you for including the Paralympic topic in your session. I'm very honored to be here and to share with you a little bit about our world. The title of my talk is Technology in Modern Paralympic Sport, Diversity and Inclusion. So I'm the Director of Science and Technology in the Israeli Paralympic Committee. I'm fortunate to have our office not too far from this beautiful coastline in Tel Aviv. You're all welcome as soon as you can get a flight ticket. Let's dive in. For those who who don't know much about the Paralympic Committee, so the International Paralympic Committee is the umbrella organization for many federations and sports organizations for people with disabilities. It's founded in Germany in September 1989. And the Paralympic States is mission and the vision and the mission, and both are related to our topic today. So the mission is to enable Paralympic athletes to achieve sporting excellence and inspire and excite the world. And the vision is that IPC wants to promote the Paralympic values and to create sports opportunities for all persons with a disability from beginner to elite level. So the Paralympic movement shares some values, which includes courage, determination, inspiration, but specifically to our topic, one of the values is equality. Through sport, para-athletes celebrate diversity and show that difference is a strength. As pioneers for inclusion, they challenge stereotypes, transform attitudes, and break down social barriers and discrimination towards persons with disabilities. Maybe you don't know, but the Paralympic Games are the third large event of humanity after the Olympic Games and the football, soccer World Cup. So it's a huge event and a huge opportunity to show the world that, yes, we can. Also, when you go into the website of the Paralympic Committee, you see that they focused a lot on diversity and inclusion, and there is a position statement about this topic and committees that are tackling this thing, which means that it counts. Tokyo 2020 Games that were supposed to be held very soon and were just postponed to next year, hopefully. Adopt the slogan of diversity and inclusion also for the Olympic and the Paralympic. And they say that Tokyo 2020 will embrace diversity and by celebrating the differences of individuals, while inclusion will see people accepted and respected regardless of age, ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, or intellectual or physical impairment. So as you can see, diversity and inclusion are very, very important for the Paralympic movement. However, now we are going to tackle the subject of technology in Paralympic sports. And what I want you to see is whether, or to ask yourself, whether technology serve these ideas and values or actually create more gaps and doesn't really serve the idea of diversity and inclusion. So a few years ago, I was a member of the Sports Science Committee of the International Paralympic Committee, and a question came to our table: how far should technology be allowed to influence sporting performance? And we spent days and weeks coming up with the position statement, like what is the opinion of the Paralympic movement about integrated technology in our sport? The bottom line of this position statement was, as long as there are no negative health implications or rule violations, along with maintaining integrity, ethics, and equity in access, then technology should be allowed in the quest to achieve sporting excellence. So it means that we endorse technology. We think that technology is very important in our domain, but we want it to be fair and of course not to put any risk or to put our athletes in risk. So let's see what are the applications of technology in Paralympic sports. First, it allows participation. We use technology for efficient training. We use technology to reduce risk of injuries. We use a lot of technology in the classification process to make our game fair because our athletes compete. So it's different health conditions and impairments who compete against each other. So we want to make sure that the impact of the impairment on performance is at the same level, in the same class. And there is technology that we use to enhance sport performance. And that's the one that I'm going to focus a little bit more about in this talk. I will just give you a few examples. So technology allowing participation, we talk about the lightweight wheelchairs that designed for every individual and for every sport. We talk about the running and jumping prosthetics. We talk about the winter sports equipment and more. So I will take one example, which is what we call nowadays the blades. And I want to show you how material development changed the way that the Paralympic movement is nowadays. So I will just focus on this device, what we call prosthetics. So prosthetics were here forever. So this is a picture from ancient Egypt. And then we have from the 16th century prosthetics from metal. And then we have the 17th century, it's from wood. And then we have at the 18th century metal again. And then in the 50s of the previous millennia, we have the plastic that comes into place. Then in the 70s, there's going back a little bit into wood, but with other materials. And then a big, big jump in the 80s, we are introduced to the flex foot made out of carbon fiber. And this is a game changer already. And in the 90s, we have the flex sprint. So at the beginning, this was really wow and very, very unique. But nowadays, this is something that you can buy from many companies. This is a shelf product, and it's not only for elite athletes, but also kids can now enjoy this technology. And actually, even Nike, so brands that are well known for the vast public, sell these kind of products. But, and let me lead you through this one, look what it did to the results of the running in the Paralympic movement. I'm going to lead you through this one. So down bottom, you see the average scores of the finals in the 100 meters run. And here down, this is the Olympians, okay? And what you can see is that it's pretty straight line around the 10 seconds. However, when we look only on one class, which is the above knee single amputation, what you see is that there is a very linear line of improving in the race scores, and we're getting very, very close to the 10 seconds. And well, maybe our athletes got better, but we all know that since the 92, it's when we started having the blades. And also we can look at the winter sport, it's the same idea. Today we have very sophisticated machines for sledge hockey, for monoski, stick ski, snowboard, bobsledge. So we have all the different winter sports, and we have also the Paralympic Winter Games. The second application is technology for efficient training. Here we talk about wearable and tracking technology. We talk about video analysis. We talk about physiological and biomechanical measures. The technology that we use during training remains confidential because this is where we can gain some advantage over our opponents. And I will just give you an example. Here it's video analysis done with a drone, so with our kayaker. And the advantage is that we can shoot the kayaker from different angles, different heights, and then we go back to the room and we can assess the video. Another example of wearable technology is with our swimmers. That's this specific device called TritonWear. It's from Canada. And during the session, they wear this device on their goggle, and while they are swimming, all the different parameters are being recorded, and then the coach can look at the results and can monitor the swimmers for a period of time and to compare one to another. And the last one is also the testing in the lab. This is at the Sylvan Adams Sports Institute in Tel Aviv University. And here is, for instance, a cardiopulmonary test for our hand cyclists. So these are all technologies that we use during the training time. Then we have the technology to reduce the risk for injuries. We want to understand injury patterns. We want to recognize safety issues. We deal a lot with equipment configuration and also to optimize the recovery of our athletes and the training intensities. So just one example is the Normatec suits for a quicker recovery. And now I'm going to go through to the part that is really relevant for our talk. And this is the technology that we are using to enhance performance. We talk about really advanced technologies, above standard sport equipment. We talk about very, very expensive machine. So I just wrote here, technologies only for the rich. And these technologies are being used during a competition, and I put a question mark after the word legal. So let me just show you how how it looks like. This is the 100-meter run in the London Games. And what you see is different blades and different runners from the same class. Now, the thing is that we can monitor a little bit the blades. Like we can say what should be the height of the blades, what should be the weight sometimes, but it's very difficult to control the material. And that's where we really have problems. And I just want to show you that the difference between the two fastest runners on Earth nowadays, Usain Bolt, the Olympian, is with 9.58 seconds, and Oliveira from Brazil, our Paralympian athletes, with 10.57, which means that less than 1 second differ from these two athletes. And this one, we call him disabled. Another example is Markus Riam from Germany, and the long jumper. He wanted and tried to qualify to the Olympic Games and was refused. And here again, my dear friend Miyamura from Japan have a prediction model that shows that in 2027, and I argue that maybe before, the Paralympians are going to jump farther than the Olympians. And look how dangerous it is already when he jumps. He almost misses the sand. And this brings us to another topic, which we call technology doping. So the World Anti-Doping Agency considers prohibiting technologies if they are performance enhancing and they are being against the spirit of the sport. And I could argue that these technologies that I shared with you are actually, doesn't fall into this definition, or actually they contradict the definition. Yes, they are performance enhancing because our athletes, for instance, in the long jump, prefer to jump with a prosthetics leg over the biological limb. So it means that they feel that they will have some kind of advantage if they will use the blade. And about against the spirit of the sport, let's see how look the final of the 100-meter run in the Olympic. And now we will see how it looks like in the Paralympic. And this is so clear that running considered to be not so expensive sport for the Olympians because you need good shoes, but it's not so expensive. While for the Paralympians, to be an athlete in the running event, you need these sophisticated blades, which means this costs a lot. And that's why we see mainly athletes from wealthy countries participating in these sports. And we talk about inclusion and diversity, but this is not quite the case when it comes to sports that involve high-tech devices. And then it's questioning the fairness of the game. And every time we have a little bit drama about it, we see in the magazines, athletes complaining whether it was fair and so on. So I'm not sure that this is really serve the image of the Paralympic movement. But what I want to share with you is the concept of the phase of where we are today. And I think this is part of the challenge that the Paralympic movement has nowadays. And this is the concept of transhumanism. Transhumanism is based on the idea that the human species in its current form doesn't represent the end of our development, but rather a quite early phase. And I think that this is where we are nowadays. So it might sound like a science fiction, this bionic idea. And I remember when I was really little girl, we had Steve Austin, the man with a $1 million, he could see better and run faster, he could beat the train. And so, and we also know Gal Gadot is the Wonder Woman who can do magnificent things. But actually, we see nowadays people who are becoming more and more bionic. We see people that integrate the bionic arm, bionic limbs into their bones. And one can argue that this hand can push or pull or lift much heavier weight than my hand. So in our new era of man-machine interface, what does disabled really mean? And I just love this quote by Amy Mullins, she's a Paralympian. Pamela Anderson has more prosthetic in her body than I do, and no one calls her disabled. And actually, today there are the Cybathlon Games, that are being held every year in Zurich, in Switzerland, where the superhumans, which mean people with bionic arms and legs and some kind of different machines, are competing one another against another in different tasks. So these are the Bionic Olympics. So that's about it. I hope that it was interesting for you. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Wow, Asnat, thank you very much. That was absolutely breathtaking. I mean, for me, the picture with that 100 meter with the runners, you know, the differences, it's overwhelming. And, you know, from my point of view, inclusive means that actually you understand and you accept and of course you respect that everyone is different, and while giving the same opportunity to everyone, you're actually you need to drop, you know, all to get rid of discrimination. And for me to understand, I think for the first time that actually there is disagreements in this vertical specific. I mean, we can look at it as an encouraging on one side. Do you relate to that as well?
Yes, I do. Actually, this is why it is a debate. Because on one hand, I have to say that we are the pioneers in a way that from the Paralympic domain, you see how it goes to the children. It goes to some of these sophisticated machines, like the hand bikes and the prosthetics. They start as a unique thing that might create a little bit discrimination in the games, but after a while it becomes more common, and then more people can buy it, and so it's always a very, very tricky thing, because when we allowed it in the, I don't want to keep our athletes back in the 60s and 70s before they could do these things. But of course, I think that we need much more strict regulations and laws and checks. We need to find how we still want to see the talent of our athletes first and not the best machine. That's what I'm trying to say is like, we would like to see our athletes at their best, and not that the best bicycles won the race. It's our best athlete in his bicycles. I hope it's clear.
Yeah, it is. And actually we have a very related question to your to what you were just saying. A question from Denise Havalek. I hope that I'm pronouncing it well. So the question goes, so how do we know that this is fair? Do you have any requirements regarding measurements on the extension?
Okay, so the thing is that athletes will always try to gain advantage. And I cannot blame our athletes they don't want to cheat, but they are willing to do a lot to win. A lot. Now, they would do anything sometimes. And as we know, it can be drugs, it can be other ways to get any kind of advantage. So we have to come from a point of view or an assumption that they are trying to cheat. Although they are all decent and fair, but I think that as a movement, it would be wise to be a little bit suspicious. That's one. Two, I think that every sport should have clear regulations, clearer, because I think that I will give you an example from the kayaking or boats, or all the regulations are regarding the weight and the length but they don't talk about the material. So there you can do a lot. These are the gray areas. And I think that the less gray areas that we will have, the game will be more fair. That's how I see it.
I will sign on your last sentence. I would accept that, but you know, the first part of your answer, I wouldn't sign on that. I mean, for me, sports and the athletes, I always believe that it's clean, and it's you know, in the name of sport and you know, clean sporting. So I wouldn't assume, my assumption is not that there may be cheating or something like that. But this conversation, on my side anyway, I mean, I'm thinking that this is kind of positive, because it's the same level of conversation that we will be having in regarding to any sports related to any athlete. So this is on my side, this is the positive point of view. If you related that, then
Michal, I want to clarify. I don't think that they are cheating. I don't think that I can say that we are educating our athletes for the spirit of sport and to be fair. And I think that there's enough room, thanks to technology, by the way, to do it legal and right. And when I say that there are gray areas, this is all legal. That's the thing. The more gray area you have more place to play with technology. However, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the movement. I'm talking about the policy makers. They should look very carefully, because it will be too naive to think that it's always fair, it's always honest. And that's what I'm saying. Okay, I want to clarify. I don't think that our athletes are cheating.
Let me just interrupt and please add that I think is a broader question, around where is the limit if we're looking on the swimsuit when we saw
exactly the example I wanted to point out. I think this is the point where the decision was to take out and not to permit, you know, the swimmers to use those swimsuits. But it's a good thing that, you know, it was the same decision to everyone else, and this is again why I'm saying, and I'm standing out, say this is a great discussion, because you can see that actually here is the same discussion that we would have for I would say not disabled athletes, and the ones that are considered disabled, but actually they are amazing and unhuman. You know,
Michal and Tomer, about the swimsuit of Speedo, the thing is, what happened the first time that they bring it? Mm-hmm. It's also the same in the Paralympic movement. So the first time that they bring new technology, taking advantage of the gray area, as I call it, the mm-hmm. first time we are shocked, and it creates this unfairness. The second competition, we won't have this problem anymore, because all the athletes will have the same technology. You understand? So we are always a little bit behind our athletes. They are more, they are advanced than us. And if they get to, so it's always the first competition that creates the problem. But in every competition, we have the first competition when it comes to technology.
It's a great point of view, and great information for me was a few of new things that I just got to know. And I want to pass the ball now to the academic side of our discussion. And I want to hear your thoughts. I know you have a few slides, and it's very interesting. You know what? Maybe we'll go to your presentation and then we'll have like an open discussion.
Alex, welcome. And I want to thank you, Osnat, of course, for a great discussion. We could go on for hours, but of course, those topics are so interesting. Thank you so much, Osnat, and Alex, please.
Thank you very much. It's a very nice forum, so thank you for having me here, and it was a very nice presentation. Thank you, Osnat. I thought about some ideas of research during your presentation, so thank you again for that.
Alex, there is always an opportunity, you know?
I know, believe me. Okay, so thank you again for having me. Today I will talk about gender differences in sports. So there are some gender differences, surprise, but there might be some surprise in which direction. Oh, for some of you, maybe it's not surprising. Okay, so I will present several papers where I studied gender differences based on sports data. In general, I'm using sports data to study humans' behavior. So I am very much interested in sports, but I'm an economist. And as an economist, I'm interested in more general things. But obviously, I am interested that my club will win the game, but today we will not talk about it. And I have many clubs, starting from Hapoel Ashkelon, finishing with the Molde FK. Okay. So the first study is a joint work with my co-authors, Dani Cohen-Zada, Moshe Rosenbaum, and Ofer Shapir, Choking Under Pressure and Gender, Evidence from Professional Tennis. And what motivated us was the following. We know that there is a significant increase in female labor force participation over many years, but still there is a considerable underrepresentation of women in high-profile jobs. In that regard, we in Israel, you are in Israel, I'm already not in Israel, but I'm an Israeli. We have really nice things. At some point of time, we had the head of central bank was a female, head of Bank Hapoalim and Bank Leumi were female, so this is really encouraging. Nevertheless, in 2015, only less than 5% of CEOs were women in Fortune 500 companies. In 2020, this number is 37, which is 7.4%, but this is still a huge underrepresentation of female in high-profile jobs, and there are several explanations for that. One explanation is that women self-select themselves into lower-paid occupations. For example, they don't go and study like management, economics, or something like that to become CEOs. They study maybe nursing or something like that. This is the first explanation. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. But there are many studies on self-selection, and that women are shy away from competition, which may also explain this finding. The second explanation is that simple discrimination, that women are being discriminated against in the workplace, and that's the reason why they are, there is a underrepresentation, or they also earn less salaries, lower salaries. And this third reasonable possibility, which directly related to that study, is that men respond to pressure better than women. So if men perform better than women under pressure, then they will earn more, and there will be more CEOs, or they will become chairmen, and so on and so on. And I said, you know what? Okay, let's test the third one. I don't know about self-selection, I don't know about discrimination, but I understand a little bit in sports, and sports provides a huge laboratory to study human behavior. You just have to pick up the right question. So we wanted to test whether men and women perform the same under pressure. For that, we took all the matches in Grand Slams in 2010 in tennis, and we tested. We all know that usually in tennis, a server has a high probability to win a game, right? Server has an advantage. So we wanted to see what's happening to the probability to win a game on serve, the higher the pressure is. So we did many, many different things, but the easiest one to show is this one. So this is the probability to win on serve before the score is 4-4 and after the score is 4-4. The intuition is very simple. Before the score is 4-4, there is less pressure. After the score is 4-4, there is more pressure. So what we find is the following. We find that men win on serve, or men lose on serve about 15% of games before the score is 4-4. After the score is 4-4, there is a huge drop of performance, so they lose on serve about 20% of times, which is really evidence of choking under pressure. When the match becomes tight toward the end, men lose more on serve than after the pressure compared to before the pressure. Among women, we find no drop of performance. They lose on average, obviously they lose more on serve, but I don't care about that. I compare women before to women after, and I compare men before to men after. So we find zero drop of performance. So this 31% versus 32%, this is not statistically significant. So we find actually that if at all, so if we go back to those explanations, so a third reasonable possibility is that men respond better than women under pressure. Well, we have some doubts about this explanation. Actually, my wife said she doesn't need any study for that, she knows it. So that's the first one. Now, the second one is another paper that I did with my Israeli co-authors, Dani Cohen-Zada and Zeev Studiner. By the way, we are all from Ben-Gurion University Department of Economics, so this is like my academic home, although I'm here in Norway. Paper, Psychological Momentum and Gender, published in a nice journal, Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization. So we wanted to see what's happening, how previous success or previous failure affects performance. And this is a very important thing in economics in general, because first of all, it aroused much attention among economists, among psychologists. For example, political campaigns. There is this New Hampshire effect, according to which a winner of the first state in primaries in the USA gains a momentum advantage. Because it is very important to win the first stage, because then in the second stage, the loser may say, okay, why should I invest more money? And then there are some strategic allocation of budgets. So this is important to understand how to allocate budgets, efforts in a multi-stage competition. Also in stock markets, if I invest and I'm happy and the investment was good, I invest more. So momentum has an effect also in stock markets. And by the way, Eugene Fama, this guy who won Nobel Prize in economics, he said that momentum is the biggest trait of his theory of efficiency of markets. And also in tennis matches, if you win the first set, you have a higher probability to win in the second set. There is a study on that. So there are more 2 zeros than 2 ones in best of 3 tennis matches. So, but how to test the psychological momentum? Because there are some strategic considerations. In psychology, we have no strategy. It's pure psychological thing. So in 2012, I was with my wife in the Olympic Games in London, and I watched judo competition. We only had tickets for judo. And then I saw this nice tournament design. You know, in judo, those of you who are Israelis, you probably know, but those who is not from Israel, maybe this is our national sport in Israel, right? So this is a very interesting tournament design, because up to quarterfinal, a loser is eliminated. But starting from quarterfinal, a winner of quarterfinal advances for semifinal, for example, player 1, and the loser of quarterfinal is relegated to the so-called repechage stage. Then losers of quarterfinals, they compete in repechage, and then they compete in the bronze medal fight against a loser of semifinal. So we have a fight where a winner of the previous match, let's say player 2, competes against the loser of the previous match. So clearly we have one competitor who has a psychological momentum advantage. Here it's player 2. Player 2 won his previous match. Player 7 lost his previous match. That's the story. And we asked, okay, does it have any effect? The one with psychological momentum, does he has a higher probability to win or not? Very simple question. I like simple questions because it's easier to answer, and there are so many easy unanswered questions. So don't make it complicated. When I said this, you see this.
This is the answer for the easy question, you mean?
Yeah, that's the answer of the easy question, but don't worry. We are not going here, but there are many regressions and econometrics. Do not worry about it. What you have to understand is that among men, you have a positive probability to win, these positive numbers, regardless of specification. We control for duration of the last fight, head-to-head meetings between the judokas, duration of the all fights in the competition, the rankings, the home advantage, whatever. We, you know, in economics, you have to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that this works. So what we find is there is a positive probability of about 20 percentage points higher probability to win if you compete after winning your last fight, or if you compete with psychological momentum among men, and those stars, this is statistically significant. Among women, we find zero, null result. Women are not affected by psychological momentum. Only men are affected. So the second study where we find that actually men are exposed to different psychological effects. And the difference between them is also significant. We are not going into those regressions. So our finding that psychological momentum positively affects performance among men, but not among women, actually one thing before, we found this result. Positive effect among men, no effect among women. Why is that? We economists, we think we know everything. But the problem is that we don't. And I had to...
That's because women knows everything.
Probably. So we had to understand what's going on. So I think I did the PhD in biology when I wrote this paper. So I read many papers in biology, and any biologist would have told me this result. So this result is in line with the biological literature on the effect of testosterone on performance. So this literature has widely shown that while testosterone enhances performance of both men and women, we know that higher levels of testosterone is good for performance, both for men and women, but it commonly increases following victory and decreases following loss only among men. So there is within body reaction. If we won, if I'm, as a male, if I'm winning, I have a good feeling because of some kind of testosterone. Among women, it doesn't work like that. If she wins or if she loses, testosterone has no effect on the mood or whatever. So there are so many papers on it. Now, but then we said, you know what? That's interesting. How many men, what is the share of female in 2008 in Wall Street? What was the share of female in traders? It was 10%. 90% men, 10% women. Then we went to the literature on finance from judo. You see, we started with judo and we're finishing with biology and finance. And then there are many papers that provided evidence that increases in testosterone lead to greater optimism and risk-taking among men. And then the authors claim that testosterone may help to sustain the upward momentum of a bull market in which high profits fuel optimism and lead to further risk-taking. So I had a good investment, the investment worked well, I want to invest more and more and more. And this is how bubble prices are created. Now, there are some other studies that reports that there is a inverse relationship between the magnitude of price bubbles and the frequency of female traders in the market. So we need to have more female in financial markets. There is another study that claims that there are grounds to assume that women are less exposed to the effect of testosterone when it comes to financial risk-taking. And this effect may lead male traders, because of some successful investment, to take abnormal risks, which in turn create price bubbles. So you see how sports data allows us to learn more general things. And on the other hand, we can see that actually male are those who need some psychological help much more than female. And I would like to conclude with this nice statement that if it was Lehman Sisters, it would be a different world.
Wow, I mean, Alex, you know, I feel as if whatever I'm going to say now is going to completely ruin your perfect conclusions in regarding to women. So, you know, I think that I totally agree with everything your conclusions are, you know, summing this up. I think maybe it's time to go for to see a few questions from our participants. Maybe have you tried to look for? This question is from Dennis. Oh, again, yeah. Hi, Dennis. Very active. Great. So, have you tried to look for recent studies on stress related to success? Since the odds to, oh, I lost that. But did you pick the question, Alex?
I will read it now. Since the odds to win when services are lower compared to accepting side, would you be able to share the study in any way? First of all, I'm happy to share the study. You can find it on my webpage, or you can write me an email and I am happy to send it to you. You just Google my name. There are not too many Alex Krumers in the world. So first of all, our results are subject to a very plausible assumption that in tennis, performance of server is more important than performance of receiver. If we believe in that, which plausible because 80% of times you win on serve, meaning that server has an advantage, then our results are plausible. So with regard to stress and all those things, we did not test. I only take data which is available and ask nice questions. And then whatever I find, and I'm using some theory and those types of things. Because when I came to this question, I had no, like, I only was driven by this third assumption why women earn less, that they perform worse. So I said, let's test it, whether this is true or not. We found a completely different result. By the way, I remember once in Channel 10, I left Israel in 2015 to Switzerland. And then one of my friends called me and said, oh, now they talk about your study on Channel 10 when they want to, they were discussed about having more female in combat forces, that women do not perform worse under pressure. So I was like, whoa, so we did something in this life.
This is very interesting for sure. I think we're just about to close, and I see a very interesting, maybe last question, because it's really actually related to the topic of our session. It's the question from Tanya, I think. What do you, and this is for both of you, maybe Osnat, you as well. What do you think about the issue regarding transgender athletes and their level of testosterone? What is the border which has to be taken into account when deciding what level shouldn't be considered as doping?
This is a very difficult question, but I will tell you something. It's like somebody is born with talent, then, and I'm not going into transgender, but let's say there is someone, this female from South Africa, 800 meters, I think. I forgot her name. She has abnormal levels of testosterone. If she is indeed a female, and I have no doubts about it, why should I doubt that? She was like I don't know, LeBron James or Michael Jordan were born with abnormal levels of talent, and this is allowed. So what's the problem with abnormal levels of testosterone? As long as it's legal. If it's legal, I have big problem with not allowing her compete against other women. So she has more testosterone. So what's wrong? And what about if more rich countries have better facilities to train than less rich countries? Then what? So this is my opinion, but I might be completely wrong.
Okay. Well, I think it was very, very interesting.
Can I answer this? Because I have a different opinion.
Okay, yeah, of course.
But the
talking
Olympic
about diversity, of course, yeah.
the Olympic movement didn't adopt my idea. Well, I didn't share it with them, but I will share it with you. I think that the Olympic movement can learn from the Paralympics. And I think that our class system is maybe not the perfect one, not the best one, but I think that the fairest thing to do is to have class for transgenders and not to force them to reduce the level of testosterone if they wanted to. I think that would solve the entire thing, just to have another class. Like you have the weight categories in martial arts, or you have male, female. I think that the fairest thing to do is to have another class. That's my opinion, but I know that the Olympic movement doesn't want to do it the way we do it, but I think that's the fairest.
Okay, first of all, I mean, thank you for sharing your opinion as well. This session is all about diversity and inclusive. So thank you both very much. It was very interesting. And of course, we're going to have more and more interesting sessions here in this forum by Colosseum. Tim, I'm going to pass the ball back to you. And thank you all for now.
Yeah, I was listening carefully all along, and I was really blown away by the insights we got today, both by Osnat and Alex. Thank you so much for that. And I think, you know, all the hidden debates and conversations that this brings is really what we want to foster with this format and with these talks. So we're going to have many more tackling different topics, and this one in particular, you know, it's endless. We talked about the Paralympic movement, the gender equality or inequality in performance, and so it's really amazing. Thank you so much for joining. I just like to share just before we release you that next week we'll be hosting our demo day. So this is also part of our mission to, you know, push relevant technology solutions to you, to investors, to sports tech fans in general. Also trying to you know, represent the more diverse panel of solutions. So we'll have a very great sessions next week with, again, as I mentioned, representatives from the Women in Tech movement in the investors panel. And then, of course, we'll be very happy to see you in 2 weeks for another round of those Global Sports Tech Talks, tackling, again, a very topical issue. And then maybe Tomer, if Tomer is Tomer on the line?
Yes, on the line.
Please.
So if you're here in Israel and you love sports and tech, we just opened the first sports tech management with Wingate. Let me share my screen 1 second. Okay. So this is the course. It's gonna be almost 6 months on Wingate every Friday. Some people can do it part of like a first degree with Rupin. Some people can do it like externally, but 5 courses around other developments, smart stadiums, esport, gaming, and much more. So if you know people and they looking in this stage what exactly to learn and how to be, what to do, maybe it's the right place. So that's all. And thank you to have all of you with us. Thank you, Osnat. Thank you, Michal. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, team.
Yes. Thank you, Tomer, for sharing this. I think this is a great program. And again, thank you to all of us for joining. We've had more people on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you so much, and see you very soon next week and the week after. Take care, stay safe, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thank you. Bye-bye.